number 4, Megan Gallagher.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government when it was first informed of water and mould ingress at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Presiding Officer, in terms of recent media interest in potential mould and water ingress, antimicrobial resistance and healthcare associated infection, Our High Scotland notified the Scottish Government of an incident of water ingress in Ward 4B in the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital on the 26th of February 2026. Ministers were made aware of this late afternoon on the same day. At the time, this alert was assessed as amber, and then the 5th of March, ministers were made aware that Glasgow had reassessed this as red, following significant public anxiety and media interest. Ms Gallagher will be aware that the First Minister made Parliament aware of that on the 5th of March during First Minister's questions. That Hayat red has now been reassessed and reduced to amber. In the interests of full transparency, I am making Parliament aware that this morning it was confirmed that a swab taken from room 85, which was closed on the 19th of February, has shown mould growth. As colleagues would expect, I have made it clear to Greater Glasgow and Clyde that I expect their continued focus to see these issues resolved as soon as possible.
Megan Gallagher.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his reply, and he's right to say that there's media interest, but of course the public will be concerned at the developments the Cabinet Secretary has just outlined. Bone marrow transplant patients are among the most vulnerable in the NHS, and common airborne mould can cause life-threatening infections. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what further action the Government is taking to ensure that the wards, not the ones that he's mentioned, but other wards, have also been inspected for mould and water ingress? When will the bone marrow ward be safe for use? And ultimately, who will be held accountable for this latest incident at Queen Elizabeth University Hospital?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I had the pleasure to visit the ward staff last Wednesday and to hear directly from them as to the mitigations that are being taken by clinical staff to continue to see the ward being safe, because it continues to be used. There are rooms that are closed in order to manage safety and to take a risk-averse approach and to ensure, as Megan Gallagher rightly says, that the risks are being managed given the immunosuppressed patients with clinically driven mitigations in place. There is an oversight board in place that's co-chaired by Sir Lewis Ritchie that are looking at this. The incident management team has also been set up. That is receiving independent clinical assurance from a colleague in Newcastle, and the Hayat is in place to ensure the ongoing transparency and action that is required. But as I said in my initial answer to Ms Gallagher, I have ensured this morning to impress upon Greater Glasgow and Clyde the importance that ministers place on Greater Glasgow and Clyde getting this issue resolved as soon as possible.
Claire Hockey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I remind members of my register of interest. It's vital that staff and patients alike feel safe within our NHS estate. Can the Cabinet Secretary say further how the recently announced oversight group will ensure the Board of NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde take immediate steps to strengthen trust and patient confidence in the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, Claire Hockey is absolutely right, and that's why the new Safety and Public Confidence Oversight Group will play a vital role in strengthening public and political confidence in the safety of the facilities and the environment in which services are delivered across the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital and the Royal Hospital for Children. Drawing on the external expertise of national agencies and industry experts, the group will provide assurance that the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital offers a safe environment for patient and staff. It's important to stress that staff groups and patient groups are also represented on that oversight group, and it met for the first time yesterday. The Safety and Public Confidence Oversight Group will report to the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde Board and to the Chief Operating Officer of NHS Scotland, who will provide regular scrutiny and support and will ensure that ministers are regularly updated.
Thank you. Question number 5, Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to improve the reliability and accountability of bus services in rural and coastal constituencies.
Minister Jim Fairley.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And I very much welcome this question from Karen Adam, because the Scottish Government is absolutely committed, in partnership with operators and local authorities, to looking at ways of ensuring that everyone has accessible public transport regardless of where they live. So to the substantive point, in 2026 and 2027, we continue to provide financial support for bus services with a £46.5 million for the Network Support Grant, and we will launch a further round of very successful plugged-in communities. We've also commenced a £10 million regional pilot for a £2 bus fare cap, and that will be rolled out in the Highlands and Moray from the 23rd of March 2026. That allows us to assess potential to improve connectivity in rural areas.
Karen Adam.
I thank the Minister for that answer. In my constituency of Banffshire and Buchan Coast, I recently carried out a survey which showed extremely low satisfaction with the local stagecoach bus services, with repeated cancellations, poor communication and concerns about accessibility. Many people told me the service is simply not reliable enough for work, education or healthcare appointments. What further action can the Government take to ensure operators delivering services in rural areas meet acceptable standards of reliability and that communities like mine are not left behind?
Minister.
I very much appreciate the point that Karen Adam makes. I'm from a rural constituency myself, and I genuinely appreciate the vital role that local bus services in those rural communities and the importance of reliable services for commuters of Banffshire, Buchan and all rural communities in Scotland. So the Traffic Commissioner is responsible for enforcing service reliability in line with the operator's registration. And through legislation, we have given local transport authorities powers to action to improve the services in their area under partnership working, franchising or running their own services. So we want all local transport authorities, including rural and coastal authorities, to explore the powers available to them and make the necessary improvements that they see fit.
Brief supplementary, Willie Rennie.
Bus services in North East Fife are constantly being chopped and changed, leaving people stranded who are desperate to get to work to secure their employment. Why has it taken since 2019 to utilise the regulatory powers that the Minister has just set out? When are we going to get a move on and implement these powers? Minister.
Well, the powers are there for local authorities to use as they see fit. All the powers have been delivered, whether it's franchising or local partnership. The powers are there for the local authorities, and it will be up to them to decide what is the best system that they want to use in their area.
Question number 6, Douglas Lumsden.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what its position is on whether it's appropriate for the Cabinet Secretary for Climate Action and Energy to use terms such as far right in the context of objections to energy projects.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome this opportunity once again to correct these inappropriate and wilfully misleading claims by Conservative MSPs about my interview in a national newspaper, in which I was referring to the anti-net zero rhetoric that has been weaponised by Reform UK, who said they would dismantle the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero at UK government level. This rhetoric uses the legitimate concerns of communities, which I fully understand, to put at risk our energy security, divide and dilute our fight against climate change and damage the economic opportunities for Scotland that come with investment in climate action. It's essential that communities feel able to engage with us on the planning and consenting of energy projects.
Douglas Lumsden.
Presiding Officer, it's clear what's going on here. The Cabinet Secretary is trying to silence community groups who are against monster pylons, battery storage and substations.
Let's hear Mr Lumsden, thank you.
That are ruining much of rural Scotland. The Government have stopped email submissions to the ECU because there were too many objections, something that the Cabinet Secretary didn't seem to understand. They have stopped people seeing the objections before the submission deadline has closed, and they have resorted to mudslinging to try and silence these communities. These communities' voices, they will never be silenced. These community groups have lost all confidence in Gillian Martin, so will she apologise and reverse the changes to the ECU that are making it harder for communities to be involved with the process?
Thank you. I'd ask those who are joining us to do so quietly, please. Cabinet Secretary.
Mr Lumsden is demonstrating once again that his preferred method of political engagement is through personal attacks that have scant regard to fact. Instead of what the vast majority of people would like to see from spokesperson on energy and climate action, which is ideas on how we can improve the energy security of our nation, create jobs and opportunities for their citizens and play our part in reducing harmful greenhouse gas emissions. That's what I do, day in, day out.
Question number 7, Jamie Halcrow-Johnston.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on the importance of local decision-making and local accountability in the NHS.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government remains fully committed to involving people and communities in the decision-making that affects them and their NHS. Our Planning with People, Community Engagement and Participation guidance has been used by boards to involve local communities in planning local services from community hubs to out-of-hours services to models of care. The guidance sets out boards' responsibilities for community engagement when services are being planned or changes are being considered, and ensures that local people, communities, are meaningfully involved.
Jamie Halcrow-Johnston.
The Health Secretary will be aware of Scottish Labour's proposals to axe local health boards like NHS Orkney, Shetland, the Western Isles, Highland and Grampian in favour of 3 health boards for the whole of Scotland. In my Highlands and Islands region, our local boards, and particularly the island boards, remain a valuable means of local accountability in response to local needs, while a north of Scotland approach would significantly reduce decision-making by people actually living and working in the communities they're supposed to serve. While the SNP also has a track record of centralising health services away from local communities, can the Health Secretary at least agree with me that Labour's plans to axe health boards across the Highlands and Islands would be a backward step? And would he accept that, as well as more local delivery of services, communities also want to see local decision-making and local accountability protected in our NHS?
Cabinet Secretary.
As someone born and brought up in Orkney, I recognise the importance of local services being as local as possible and decisions being taken about services being as local as possible. Mr Halcrow-Johnston will be aware of the work that we are doing in order to reform the way that our boards cooperate and work together. That subnational planning includes rural and island work streams to ensure that there is that leadership for rural and island service planning and giving clear voice to rural and island communities in the planning processes. And I hope that gives Mr Halcrow-Johnston that assurance that he and his constituents are looking for.
Question number 8, Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the financial sustainability of NHS Ayrshire and Arran.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, as Ms Mockin and colleagues will remember from my comments on the 17th of February, giving concerns over their financial sustainability, NHS Ayrshire and Arran has been moved to Stage 4 of NHS Scotland's Support and Intervention Framework for Finance. This will involve senior external support and monitoring from Scottish Government, including establishing an assurance board. I have full confidence in Interim Chief Executive Gordon James and the refreshed leadership team. My officials will continue to work with them to return NHS Ayrshire and Arran to a sustainable financial footing while maintaining and improving services for the people of Ayrshire and Arran.
Carol Mockin.
Thank you. Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? Last month, NHS Ayrshire and Arran's Interim Chief Executive stated to a committee in this Parliament that the board is not in a financially sustainable position. The Health Board has been in deficit since 2017-18 and now owes the highest level of outstanding loans of any health board. It isn't financially sustainable, and given it was first escalated to Stage 3 over 7 years ago, we seriously have to question why the Health Board was allowed to sit on such a high level of escalation for so long. So is the Cabinet Secretary confident that the support and intervention framework is working as effectively as it should be?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I am. I agree with Gordon James in his assessment. That's why Ayrshire and Arran is at level 4 of the escalation framework and why it's getting additional assistance from the Scottish Government. They have received support from government commensurate with its challenges, but the board and its financial position is not recovering. So the decision was made to move it up to level 4. We continue to invest in Ayrshire and Arran to improve services and to see it returning to a sustainable financial position. We'll continue to work with them to do just that.
Thank you. That concludes general questions. Before we move to First Minister's questions, I invite the First Minister to make some remarks on the 30th anniversary of the Dunblane shootings.
Presiding Officer, 30 years ago tomorrow, primary school teacher Gwen Mayer took her pupils into the gym hall at Dunblane Primary School. Shortly afterwards, a gunman entered. What followed was the deadliest, most horrific mass shooting in the United Kingdom's history. Along with Gwen Mayer, who died valiantly trying to protect her pupils, 16 children lost their lives. 15 others were injured. I, like everyone who lived through that moment, will never forget that day. On the same day as parents faced the unbearable loss of their children, my eldest son was born. I remember the preciousness of my son's birth and could not begin to imagine that day or any day since the sense of loss faced by those families. In the months that followed, grief-stricken parents and residents of Dunblane decided they would not let such tragedies happen again. They collected 750,000 signatures in their campaign to change UK gun laws, and in November 1997, handguns became illegal in the United Kingdom. Scotland has not seen a mass shooting since. My thoughts, my prayers and my deepest condolences go out to everyone impacted by that terrible tragedy, and my most heartfelt thanks go to all who took action to ensure it might never happen again. And to the community of Dunblane, they have demonstrated in the intervening years such strength and resilience to demonstrate the power of community, the power of solidarity, the power of love within Scotland, and they have the respect and the admiration of us all.
Thank you. I now call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. There's a photo of the Primary 1 class at Dunblane Primary School in 1996. It is a picture of pure childhood innocence. Teacher Gwen Mayer beaming with pride. Cheeky wee smiles on the faces of her young pupils. On March the 13th, 1996, they were visited by evil. After 3 minutes of gunfire, Gwen and 16 of our pupils lay dead. I remember, we all remember, where we were on that spring day. News bulletins stopped us in our tracks. How could any parent bear the agony, the endless agony of such loss? Dunblane became synonymous with tragedy. But the town's tears of sorrow turned to anger and then to action. Parents, politicians and ordinary folk from across Britain demanded that there could never be another Dunblane, and they meant it. Handguns were banned, lives were saved, and they continue to be saved. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Tomorrow marks 30 years since the Dunblane tragedy, a day that will be forever etched in our memories. 16 children and a teacher went to school that day, but didn't make it home because of the actions of an evil man. But it's not that evil man we should remember, it's the beautiful faces of those innocent children, their brave teacher, the families left grieving forever, and all the incredible individuals who helped pull that community together at the hardest of times. And it's right that action was taken to ban handguns, but we must ensure our laws are robust for the challenges and the technological advancements of today. So, of course, we carry the profound sorrow of the Dunblane families in our hearts. But I think we should also think of the children who survived that day, but who have lived with the grief and the trauma ever since. And we pay tribute to the inspiring resilience of that community that raised and loved them. We will remember them forever.
Thank you. I call Gillian Mackay.
30 years ago tomorrow, 16 primary ones and their teacher went to school and didn't come home. 15 more were injured. Those children would have been the same age as me. My mum was in a hospital, having just given birth to my brother, when the news came over the radio. The panic across central Scotland was real, and she always told how her relief at me being safe was immediately dashed by the realisation that others did not have the same fate. Hopes and dreams that were never realised. No words can do real justice to the pain and the grief of the families who never got to see their babies grow up. And my thoughts, and those of the Scottish Greens, go to all of those who are affected. We were proud to take action on a cross-party basis to tackle the ownership of handguns, As parliamentarians, we have to strive to make sure that this can never happen again.
Thank you. I call Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This week, our hearts are with the people of Dunblane, and in particular, the families of the 16 children and their teacher lost to us that day. 30 years on, and many of those children might have been parents themselves by now, but the gunshots of a madman cut short the promise of those young lives. They brought a nation to grief and a parliament to action, forever banning the domestic ownership of handguns, and by so doing, preventing the likelihood of repetition of such a tragedy. This year, and every year, we remember the trauma of Dunblane and the shadow it still casts across our national story.
Our next item of business is First Minister's questions, and at question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, President Officer. The inferno that ripped through my home city of Glasgow was devastating. Only the bravery and professionalism of 250 firefighters stopped the flames from engulfing Central Station. There are many serious questions about the dodgy vape shop where the fire started, but the immediate focus must be on local businesses who already face severe pressures. On Tuesday, John Swinney said that the SNP government was in discussion with the SNP-run City Council. So can he tell these struggling business owners exactly what support will be provided and when?
First Minister.
First of all, let me associate myself very closely with the remarks that Russell Finlay has made about the bravery and the effectiveness of the firefighting operation, which has enabled us to be in a situation where Glasgow Central Station and the Central Hotel and most of the infrastructure around the site of the fire has been protected, although there is significant disruption to individuals as a consequence. The Government is in active discussion with Glasgow City Council, who are gathering information from the affected businesses about their circumstances. I'm not in a position today to say definitively what financial support will be available, but I expect to be able to do so very shortly. And Glasgow City Council and the Government will discuss exactly what support can be made available to the affected businesses. And I include in that the businesses that have been directly displaced by the fire and those who have been affected by the access to the central Glasgow area, which is of course severely restricted because of the safety considerations at the site.
So Finlay.
Thank you. I'm not sure if that answer will inspire huge confidence. There does seem to be a lack of urgency to this matter, because many businesses impacted by the Glasgow fire already face massive imminent rises to their rates bills. Across Scotland, these bills will force some to cease trading and lay off workers. Two prominent businessmen have issued particularly stark warnings. Lord Haughey said there could be, and I quote, civil disobedience and a mass campaign of non-payment. Sir Tom Hunter said, and I quote, "Mr Swinney, First Minister, you understand what's going on here, and you understand the punishment. I'm going to say it today, can't pay, won't pay." My party is campaigning to pause the new rates bills before they come into effect on the 1st of April. So will John Swinney heed these warnings before it's too late?
First Minister.
I recognise the challenges that are faced by the business community in Glasgow in general and across the country, and I recognise the significance of the issues in relation to non-domestic rates, which of course has been central to the Government's budget provisions for many years, where we've protected the business community from some of the increases that they have faced. Now, some properties will see some significant increases in rateable values at the 2026 revaluation, but the transitional relief that the Government has put in place means that the gross bills of an estimated 60,000 properties will be lower in 2026-27 than they would otherwise have been. That is, of course, part of the wider non-domestic rate support that the Government puts in place, which totals in excess of over £870 million in 2026-27.
Russell Finlay.
John Swinney mentions the budget response, but that is a sticking plaster. Businesses are bleeding out, and Scottish hospitality is being hit hard, with pubs already closing at a rate of 1 per week. But John Swinney doesn't want to know. Last month, I invited him to discuss Scotland's pub crisis over a pint. He refused. The Scottish Hospitality Group invited Mr Swinney to its recent hustings. He refused. Instead, he sent a local councillor. The same group also wrote to Mr Swinney on the 30th of January asking for a meeting. He hasn't even replied. Does John Swinney think that his high-handed treatment of this critical sector of the Scottish economy is appropriate?
First Minister.
Well, President Officer, this extensive engagement goes on between my ministers and the different sectors that are involved in the business rates discussions. So there are a whole range of different meetings that have taken place between ministers and representatives of the hospitality industry as part of this work. And of course that led to the budget propositions being put forward that put in place very significant transitional reliefs that will reduce the net bill for eligible properties to 25% of what it would have been in 2026-27. So that is a significant contribution. And as I said in one of my earlier answers, it brings in, as part of a package of reliefs estimated to be worth over £870 million in the next financial year to companies in Scotland. So I understand the concerns within the business community. I engage regularly with a range of different business organisations. My ministers do exactly the same to make sure that we can take the action within our financial resources available to us to support the business community and to encourage their growth and their development within Scotland. And that's at the heart of the government's budget proposals.
Russell Finlay.
He couldn't even be bothered going to hustings. He didn't even bother sending a minister or an MSP to the hustings. So let me tell you about another shocking example of John Swinney's disgraceful, high-handed approach to business. I contacted him directly about Katie Long. Katie took on a derelict pub in Mr Swinney's constituency and worked tirelessly to transform it into a thriving community local. But Katie's rates bill is about to double, and she's on the brink of calling last orders for the last time. A community would lose its local, 26 people would lose their jobs, and over a fortnight ago, I asked John Swinney to visit Katie's pub. He hasn't even replied. So Mr Swinney won't go to Katie, so she's come here today. And I'll be going with Katie to a nearby pub at 1:30 this afternoon. So will John Swinney join us to discuss Katie's plight and Scotland's pub crisis over a pint?
First Minister.
Well, I'm very familiar with the case that Mr Finlay puts to me, and of course there will be benefits in that case of the government's transitional relief system that will be put in place. Now, I can't, I'm afraid, because of my commitments today, join Mr Finlay at 1:30. I would ask Parliament to understand that there are a range of different issues I'm wrestling with today that I have to take forward. But what I would say to Mr Finlay is this government has demonstrated consistently over its every year it's been in office a determination to put in place support for business. We were the first government to introduce the small business bonus scheme, which the pub that Mr Finlay referred to has benefited from. We are a government that puts in place a series of different reliefs, whether it's in hospitality or retail or leisure premises, or whether it's through the reduction in the rates that are placed in terms of rateable levels within Scotland. And that's all part of £870 million of financial support for this government. And I would just point out to Mr Finlay, he voted for not one single penny of it when it came before Parliament, and this is just posturing from Russell Finlay.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, on Sunday night, I, like so many other Glaswegians, watched in horror as yet another fire ripped through the heart of our city. I want to place on record my thanks to the emergency services who ran towards danger to protect others. And thanks to them, no one was seriously injured or lost their life. On Monday morning, when I spoke to workers there, I saw the best of Glasgow. Businesses handing out coffee to workers dealing with the fallout, volunteers helping to manage commuters. People really do make Glasgow. Now, there are a number of issues raised by this fire: the regulation and licensing of vape shops, the support packages for those that have lost their livelihoods, how soon we can get normality for workers and commuters, and of course the resourcing of our fire and rescue service. So what urgent lessons will the government learn from this incident?
First Minister.
So let me associate myself also with the remarks of Mr Sarwar. I visited the site on Monday. I was briefed by the various organisations that were involved, led by the firefighting commanders of the incident, and understood at first hand from them the severity of the incident that they were dealing with, but also the enormous debt of gratitude we should have to them for two reasons. Firstly, that as a result of their prompt intervention and comprehensive intervention, there were no injuries, which I consider to be a minor miracle on an incident of that scale. But secondly, because of the strategic direction of the operation, Glasgow Central Station and the Central Hotel were saved from fire spread from an intense fire. And that was because of strategic judgments made by the Fire and Rescue Service. So I associate myself very much with those remarks. And then, of course, the whole recovery operation involving our transport networks, the emergency services, the volunteers who turned out, as they did very quickly, to provide that support to individuals. Now, Mr Sarwar is correct. There are a number of lessons that have to be learnt from this incident. There will be an investigation into the site, but it looks pretty obvious that it started in a vape shop in Union Street. There is regulation in place. There is more regulation being actively pursued by the United Kingdom Government, which will affect Scotland and which we are party to that regulation. And we will also be looking to identify what further steps are required to ensure that there is proper and effective regulation of these premises that are taken forward. And then lastly, and to follow up the point that I made to Mr Finlay, the Government will be putting in place financial support channelled through Glasgow City Council to support affected businesses. But we just need to take some time to establish exactly what type of support is going to make the difference. But it will be financial support because that is required by affected businesses. Anna Sarwar.
I welcome those comments from John Swinney. Fires like the one we saw on Sunday are difficult to fight, and we saw the dedication of our firefighters. But the truth is they are too often fighting fires with reduced capacity. In 2023, John Swinney and the SNP cut the number of specially designed engines called high-reach appliances, or HRAs, from 26 to just 16 for the whole of Scotland. In Glasgow, we saw 6 appliances cut to 2. And now it is believed that both of Glasgow's HRAs weren't available on Sunday due to annual inspection. Why was that ever allowed to happen? And it is believed that one had to be called from Edinburgh. Since 2013, 1 in 6 firefighter jobs have been lost. That's more than 1,200. Sunday is a reminder of what these men and women put at stake every time they go to work. Now, we don't know right now what difference the reduction in fire service capacity would have made on Sunday, but will John Swinney commit to an immediate investigation into any potential impact this may have had on the response so that lessons can be urgently learnt?
First Minister.
I understand the significance and importance of the points that Mr Sarwar puts to me, but I do come back to the point of agreement that he and I have exchanged, which is that the fire and rescue response on Sunday was exemplary and that the resources that were required were there to ensure that the fire could be extinguished, and crucially that the equipment, the high-rise equipment that was available, provided the strategic intervention that stopped the fire from spreading into Glasgow Central Station or the Central Hotel. So all of that equipment and resource was there to enable that incident to be tackled. Now, when it comes to considering the deployment of resources or the allocation of resources within Scotland for the Fire and Rescue Service, The Government obviously is very mindful of our obligations in that respect, which is why in the recent budget the Government provided an additional £23.8 million to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, bringing its budget to £435.96 million. So that's an increase in the budget for the Fire and Rescue Service. And then secondly, the Fire and Rescue Service is going through a service delivery review, but central to that review, and I've made this point to individual members who have raised issues about fire capacity around the country, the questions of fire safety and resilience and proper deployment of resources will underpin any consideration of the issues in that review. And that's the point that I would stress to Parliament today. That is the essential requirement of any review, to make sure we have a fire and rescue service that can meet the needs of Scotland as we face them today, and that's the commitment I give to Parliament today.
Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney and I agree on the exemplary nature of decision-making for those individual firefighters, but where I think he needs to commit to an urgent investigation is the impact on the capacity that was available to those firefighters. I don't think he can logically say that reducing Glasgow's appliances from 6 to 2, and those 2 appliances both being out off-stream at the same time due to inspection, couldn't have had a material difference. Now, we don't know, but he can't say categorically that they would not have had a material difference to the response of the fire, and that's why an urgent investigation must happen to establish the facts. It was right that John Swinney went to Union Street on Monday to see those who fought to put out this blaze. But government must be about more than gestures, because while John Swinney was on Union Street thanking the front line, at the very same time, Scottish Government officials were meeting FBU officials to inform them of plans for more job cuts to Scotland's fire service. How can that possibly be right? We know there are now fewer firefighters, less firefighting equipment, longer response times and station closures. Our fire and rescue service has already faced years of cuts. So surely the tragedy on Sunday must be a wake-up call and a reason to pause.
First Minister.
I would have hoped that my answer to Mr Sarwar's second question would have given him the reassurance on many of those questions, because the service delivery review that's going on within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, which is the type of exercise that has to be undertaken on a regular basis, must have public safety and the effective dealing with fire and rescue incidents uppermost in its consideration. Now, if I could explain to Parliament, since 2009-10, there's been a 33% reduction in since 2013, there's been a reduction in dwelling fires by over 20% in Scotland. But at the same time, there has been an increase in demand for fire and rescue services to deal with issues such as flooding or wildfires. Now, I say that to say that the demand and the incidents that have to be addressed are a matter that have to be constantly reviewed by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and they need to identify what are the proper resources that are available to undertake those incidents. And that's what will be considered as part of this exercise. Now, in relation to the incident on Sunday in Glasgow, I am confident that there were effective resources in place to do all that needed to be done, because in looking at the incident and looking at its severity, the impact could have been ever more greater than it actually was. It was bad enough, but it could have been ever more greater. And what that demonstrates to me is that the resources are in place to tackle such incidents, but that is an issue that must be kept under constant review, and that's what we expect the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Board to do.
Question number 3, Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Good news. A year after she was ready to leave hospital and months after I first raised this, Margaret McGill finally got home yesterday. Not because of anything the government did. The family took control of the budget and hired the carers themselves because they were told that another year in hospital was the alternative. Just down the road from Margaret, the Herald newspaper spoke to Elizabeth Jones, a mum in Caithness. Her first 2 kids were born in the local hospital. Then, on the SNP's watch, her local maternity services were downgraded. So, when Elizabeth's 3rd child needed to be born by C-section, she had to travel 100 miles alone to Inverness on a bus. In November, this Parliament backed a Scottish Liberal Democrat amendment which voted for an independent review, giving hope to families in Caithness. So why is the SNP defying the wishes of this Parliament?
First Minister.
Well, first of all, I'm delighted that Mrs McGill is home, and that's where she should be, and I'm delighted that the support is in place to enable her to be at home. And of course, the issues in relation to how individuals are financially supported at home varies around the country. I am personally a great supporter of self-directed support because I think it gives families much more control, and I'm delighted that that arrangement, which of course has been put in place and is supported by the government, enables that to happen. Now, in relation to the issues in connection with maternity services in Caithness, these issues are being taken forward as part of the maternity task force work that is underway. That has got independent engagement in the work of the maternity task force, and it's designed to look at the very vexed issues about the safe delivery of maternity services where there is not a high incidence of deliveries in particular parts of the country, and to make sure that the services can be as safe as possible for any mothers that are having babies.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
I'm sorry, but there is nothing independent about a review if an SNP minister is in overall charge of it. No wonder mums in the far north feel really let down and unsafe, and they aren't alone. New Scottish Liberal Democrat research shows that 300 times last year, maternity wards across Scotland recorded safety concerns about being short-staffed. Red flags on the Health Service's official incident reporting system. That is almost treble what it was at the start of this Parliament. The compensation the NHS has paid out to affected families has skyrocketed, and the Royal College of Midwives warn that staff are, and I quote, being stretched beyond breaking point, and that women and babies are being denied the care that they deserve. All of this on the SNP's watch. So can I ask the First Minister, don't Scotland's mums deserve better than this?
First Minister.
What Scotland's mums deserve is the safe delivery of maternity care as close to home as they can sustainably get that service. That is exactly what mums in Scotland deserve, and that's what this government delivers. Now, where there are issues of concern, the overwhelming majority of women and babies experience a safe birth and positive outcomes. But when things go wrong, we expect boards to engage openly and transparently with individual mothers and families to understand what has gone wrong. And we are also requiring Healthcare Improvement Scotland to scrutinise maternity services around the country, and we've seen various reports coming forward as that exercise is undertaken. And where there are requirements for improvement, the Health Secretary brings in the leadership of the relevant health board to insist upon that being undertaken. So what I would say to Mr Cole-Hamilton, to Parliament and to mums around the country is that the government is determined to deliver safe maternity services, and I reiterate, the majority of women and babies experience a safe birth and positive outcomes. But where it goes wrong, we expect there to be transparency, we expect there to be accountability, and that's what the government delivers.
Thank you. Question number 4, Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what measures the Scottish Government can take in discussion with the UK Government to assist households in very rural areas that are wholly dependent on oil or liquefied natural gas for heating and are not connected to the gas mains to assist with increased costs.
First Minister.
President Officer, we have engaged with the industry to understand the implications of the serious issue that Christine Graham raises with me today. We also will seek to engage with the United Kingdom Government on this particular issue. I know there's been some dialogue from the Chancellor with Members of Parliament, but there hasn't yet been dialogue with the devolved governments, but we will pursue that. We want to make sure that we are part of those discussions to understand the potential impact on individuals, on public services and on social security arrangements in Scotland. Our hope is that de-escalation in Iran can reverse the increase in costs, because that is what's fuelling the increase in costs. However, energy prices are fully reserved to the United Kingdom Government, and we have pressed the United Kingdom Government to publicly commit to financial support if prices continue to rise.
Christine Graham.
I thank the First Minister for his answer, and I note that Rachel Reeves has referred the hike to the Competition and Market Authority, but my constituents, and I suspect many constituents throughout the Chamber, need something done in the here and now. They're just simply overwhelmed by the soaring costs in their heating oil, more than doubling in days and still on the rise. The example in my constituency, in January it was 60 pence a litre, yesterday it was £1.27 a litre. Now this affects about 130,000 homes in Scotland and indeed 1.7 million UK-wide. These homes already have very limited benefit from the energy price cap, which apply to combined electricity and gas supplies, so obviously only apply to their electricity bills. Previously, with the invasion of Ukraine and the spike in heating oil then, the UK government introduced an alternative fuel payment of £200, better than nothing. Does the First Minister agree with me that alternative fuel payment should be done now, but in tandem with exposure of those cowboys profiteering and, at long last, proper regulation of this industry?
First Minister.
So the Housing Secretary has already written to the UK Government confirming our support for the Competition and Markets Authority enforcement action, which would address some of the issues that Christine Graham raised. We've also asked the UK Government to stand up the alternative fuel payment infrastructure and called for a public commitment that financial support will be made available if costs continue to rise. And the Prime Minister is committed to stepping in should that situation arise, and I would encourage him to do so.
Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Borders residents have also written to me about the rising fuel prices, particularly those who live in fuel poverty. So will the First Minister consider making a Scottish Government resilience or crisis fund available to support these people who are really living in challenging times with the rising prices?
First Minister.
Well, Presiding Officer, the issues in relation to energy prices are a reserved matter for the United Kingdom Government. So the responsibility, I've set out what the mechanism is. The mechanism is the alternative fuel payment infrastructure, which is from the United Kingdom Government, and that is the means of intervening where these circumstances arise. Now, that's the action. I would invite Rachel Hamilton to join us in demanding the UK Government act to protect rural residents. That's where the responsibility lies, and that's where the action should come from.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister will be aware that the UK Government are issuing guidance to their local authorities to use crisis and resilience funds to protect those dependent on oil and gas heating. So can I ask him if he will look at making crisis grant funds available to people in islands and rural areas dependent on gas and oil for heating? And will he also look at how Consumer Scotland can support the Competitions and Markets Authority to engage with people who are suffering because of those soaring costs?
First Minister.
Certainly, Consumer Scotland will engage very actively with the Competition and Markets Authority. They're a very good organisation that serve us well. And in relation to the crisis grant situation, we will be pressing the UK Government to take action. I'd invite Rhoda Grant to join us in making sure the UK Labour Government acts in this fashion.
Question number 5, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what assessment the Scottish Government has made of any impact on the NHS arising from reports that the number of consultants working in the private healthcare system is the highest on record.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the very modest increase of 20 private consultants over the last year has to be seen within the context of a record high number of NHS Scotland consultants. Since 2006, the number of consultants has increased by 75%, including a 150 whole-time equivalent increase over the last year, using the latest data to December 2025.
Brian Whittle.
Thank you. I thank the First Minister for that answer. But much as I accept people have choice, I am concerned that more people are accessing private healthcare, not by choice, but by necessity in the face of prolonged, painful waits on NHS care. This situation can only exacerbate if more of our experienced medics are spending less time in the NHS and more time in private practice. And for years we've heard from clinicians that working in the NHS is becoming more difficult as demand for care rises and waiting time backlogs remain stubbornly high. Can it be any wonder, really, that under the SNP, more staff are leaving the NHS for the private sector? So can I ask the First Minister what he will do to ensure that experienced medical professionals, many of whom have received their education and experience in Scotland, are encouraged to continue working for the NHS throughout their career, not only with a fair salary, but also investment in technology and prevention to improve the working environment for our NHS staff?
First Minister.
I need to correct Mr Whittle on the point about more staff leaving the National Health Service. There's more staff working in the National Health Service under this government than there have been in the past. And I just went through in my earlier answer. There's been a 75% increase in the number of consultants in the National Health Service since the government came to office. So that point is not substantiated. The second point I would make is that private admissions in Scotland are lower than they are in England and Wales. England's private health admissions are 48% higher than in Scotland. Wales are 5% higher than in Scotland, so we are in a comparative stronger position. And in relation to the performance of the National Health Service, I appreciate there are challenges in the National Health Service, but long waits are down 8 months in a row. Long waits for new outpatients have halved since July. Numbers of GPs, nurses, midwives and consultants are up. There's going to be 60 new walk-in GP clinics. That's the SNP delivering for the National Health Service, and I'm very pleased with the progress that we're making.
Claire Hockey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I remind members of my register of interest. And as the First Minister referenced, it's worth Mr Whittle noting that Scotland continues to have a substantially lower rate of take-up of private health care compared to England. And unlike Labour and the Tories, the SNP is not accepting donations from private health care firms or listening to the likes of Tony Blair about how to carve out our NHS to privatisation.
Let's hear one another.
Can the First Minister therefore outline how, under the SNP and his leadership, Scotland has seen the number of doctors, consultants and nurses increase, and what this means for bringing down waits?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, can I set out to Claire Hockey that under this government, as I've just said to Brian Whittle, but I think I need to say it again so that members hear, long waits are down for 8 months in a row. Long waits for new outpatients have halved since July, just as I promised would be the case. Number of GPs, nurses, midwives and consultants are up. 16 new walk-in GP clinics. And let me just reassure Claire Hockey, my government intends to take no lectures from Tony Blair.
Question number 6, Kevin Stewart.
To ask the First Minister what action the Scottish Government is taking to promote vaccinations to combat measles in light of reports of recent diagnoses in the NHS Grampian area.
First Minister.
President, vaccination remains the most effective protection against measles, and I urge everyone who is eligible to ensure they are fully vaccinated. Childhood immunisation uptake in Scotland remains high. Uptake of the first dose of the MMR vaccine in children by age 5 continues to exceed 95%. In NHS Grampian, MMR uptake in children is slightly above the national average at 96.5%. The Government is working closely with Public Health Scotland and NHS boards, including Grampian, to monitor measles cases and to take any necessary rapid action to protect public safety.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the First Minister for that answer. Measles is a very serious illness, but it can be easily prevented. Vaccination is safe, effective and for everyone at any age. It is part of the routine childhood immunisation programme, and we should all be encouraging parents and carers to ensure their child receives all of their vaccinations. It is galling that Reform gave a platform to an anti-vax proponent at their last conference, and I would call on all political parties and politicians in this chamber to promote preventative vaccinations. Can I ask the First Minister if his government will consider boosting their positive vaccination messaging so that we can keep people throughout Scotland safe?
First Minister.
So let me associate myself with Kevin Stewart's comments. Vaccination is the most effective way to ensure that public health is maintained, and also it's important that all of us combat harmful disinformation about vaccines. Vaccinations save lives, so it's essential that families can access clear and accurate health information. Public Health Scotland recently launched their One Less Thing to Worry About campaign, which further encourages the uptake of childhood vaccinations, and the NHS Inform website provides accessible and trustworthy guidance from medical professionals on vaccinations. So this is all important. It's also important we get the public messaging correct. So I will consider Mr Stewart's suggestion of whether we have enough resource going into the vaccination campaigns, and if there is a requirement for that to be increased, I give him the assurance that that will be considered by Government.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries. The more concise questions and responses are, the more members we will be able to take. I call Keith Brown.
Thank you. The First Minister will be aware of a leaked memo this week which revealed the Prime Minister's true attitude towards devolution. Is the First Minister as disappointed as I am that the Labour Party in Scotland has chosen to side with the Prime Minister and not with the principles of devolution, unlike their colleagues in the Welsh Senate, who called out Starmer's actions as a constitutional outrage and a betrayal of devolution? No such outcry from Scottish Labour. What assessment has the FM made of this leaked memo, and does he agree that only through a fresh start with independence can the integrity and future of Scotland's Parliament be protected and enhanced?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the memo that came to light this week from the Prime Minister indicates that the Labour Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has as much contempt for devolution as his Conservative predecessors had for devolution. So it displays an attitude which is disrespectful of the policy direction and actions of the Scottish Government. The people of Scotland voted nearly 30 years ago to establish this Parliament. This Parliament was elected to be accountable to the public for the matters responsible in relation to Scotland on public expenditure. And that is being undermined, by the UK Labour Government. So I think the lesson is pretty clear to people in Scotland. Labour is a threat to devolution, and the only way that self-government can be protected is with the fresh start of independence.
Thank you. I'd be grateful if we could all hear one another, if we could remember those gathered in the gallery. We'd like to hear too. I call Liz Smith.
Can I ask the First Minister if he is as appalled as I am that the former patients of Sam El-Jamel, who for the first and second editions of the public inquiry were allowed to attend in person to be able to hear what was being said in evidence, and who yesterday were told that that was no longer going to be the case for session 3 and that they would have to listen online. Does he agree that the decision is completely unacceptable? It's contrary to the principles of patient-centred and trauma-informed approach. And can I ask the First Minister when Scottish Government ministers were first made aware of that decision?
First Minister.
I understand the significance of the point that Liz Smith raises with me, but this is a decision, as I understand it, that's been taken by Lord Weir, who is the chair of the inquiry. And Liz Smith will know the obligations that I am under the Inquiries Act of 2005, that the chair of the inquiry must be free to take the decisions that they decide to be appropriate for the running of the inquiry, and they should certainly not be subjected to interference by ministers, and they certainly won't be subjected to interference by me. So whatever my personal sympathies about this particular issue, and as Liz Smith knows, I met with those affected by El-Jamel just last week, and I had a very constructive discussion with those affected. But I have to respect the independence of Lord Weir's inquiry. It would be thoroughly inappropriate for me to intervene on any matter of this nature.
Pauline McNeill.
Police Scotland has been fined £66,000 for a deeply serious data protection failure after the full contents of a female officer's, including medical records, intimate images and sensitive personal information, were extracted and then shared with a colleague she had accused of rape, along with her lawyer, his lawyer and the Scottish Police Federation representative. So today the Information Commissioner found that the force failed to minimise data collection, lacked adequate technical and organisational safeguards and didn't report the breach within the legally required 72 hours. So although Police Scotland has apologised for the incident and said they've learned lessons from it, does the First Minister agree that this is an absolute scandal? And if it is the case that it isn't a necessary practice to download the full contents of anyone's phone or device, then all the more reason to ensure that there are cast iron protections in place. So can the First Minister advise what steps could be taken by the Scottish Government to reassure complainers and anyone else that there is proper oversight to prevent this from ever happening again?
First Minister.
I agree completely with Polly McNeill. I think it's appalling. And I know that Police Scotland have apologised, and let me apologise to the individual affected, because I just can't begin to imagine how horrendous an experience this has been. The protection of people's data and information, particularly at any time, is very important. In cases of this sensitivity, it is even more important. So Police Scotland have got to properly, fully, openly and transparently learn the lessons of this instance. As I understand it, Police Scotland has been fined by the Information Commissioner, and that is a mark of the seriousness. So the issue has to be addressed in that fashion. But I reiterate to Polly McNeill the importance I attach to issues of this nature being taken seriously and addressed by Police Scotland, and the Justice Secretary will raise that issue with the Chief Constable when they next meet.
Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Labour are doing to Aberdeen what Margaret Thatcher did to Middlesbrough, and it's utterly shameful. Now, that's the words and assessment of GMB General Secretary Gary Smith on the impact of the Labour UK Government's policies on the North East and constituencies like mine in Banffshire and Buchan Coast. Does the First Minister share his concern, and does he agree that you don't address the cost of living crisis by making more people redundant?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I agree with Karen Adam. We are in the position in Scotland today that we have much lower unemployment than the rest of the United Kingdom. But the challenges that we are facing in relation to the oil and gas sector are because of the more rapid decline of the sector, accelerated by the Energy Profits Levy, and the slower growth in renewables than we expected. So I've made the point here at in this podium before, and I make it again, that the United Kingdom Government should remove the Energy Profits Levy so that we can safeguard employment and manage the just transition in the oil and gas sector. That's the responsible way to tackle this issue, and I reiterate my call to the UK Government to scrap the Energy Profits Levy and to scrap it now.
Alexander Burnett.
Thank the Presiding Officer. Now, the First Minister was in the Chamber last night and heard my request for a statement on the Baird Family Hospital and Anchor Centre, and I hope his business manager will reconsider this request, because a whistleblower's report has now upheld concerns over major flaws in the infection control and water systems, echoing the tragic situation at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital. Now, we all want these units to be the very best they can be, places of health where people of all ages go to get better. So can the First Minister assure us now that the HIE scribe guidance has been followed, these buildings will open with no further delay, and that patient safety and staff well-being won't be negatively impacted?
First Minister.
First of all, I recognise the importance of the point that Mr Burnett puts to me, and the delays, and I heard his speech last night, and I understand exactly all the points that he's making. It is obviously a matter of regret to me that the Baird and Anchor centres are as delayed as they are, but they are delayed because of the level of scrutiny and intervention to guarantee safety that is underway. And that is the process that is underway. And NHS Assure, who were set up to do exactly that type of scrutiny, are exercising that responsibility. Now, in relation to the building process at the Baird and Anchor, my officials have spoken to NHS Grampian this morning, who confirmed that the Water Safety Group at the Baird and Anchor met on Friday the 6th of March, and that group talked through the concerns that have been raised, and everyone present agreed on the response and the action being taken to ensure the highest level of water safety when the facilities open. As a result of the intervention of NHS Assure, buildings are not opened unless it is safe for them to do so and that they comply with all relevant requirements. And the assurance I give Mr Burnett is that that will be the case for the Baird and Anchor. Now, Mr Burnett asked me in his question for the hospitals to open without delay. I can't give him that assurance because we have to make sure they're safe to open. Now, nobody would want them open more than me. I can assure Mr Burnett, nobody wants them open more than me. But I have to learn the lessons from previous issues, and that's exactly what's going on just now.
Martin Whitfield.
Very grateful, Presiding Officer. Can I remind the Chamber of my register of interests? Following the announcement that the school strikes in 6 areas may be avoided, arising after the Scottish Government's failure to address workload issues, is to be welcomed. So can the First Minister confirm the Cabinet Secretary's statement that additional funding will be available and that the additional funding will fully cover local authorities implementing the solution given that local authorities have fixed their budgets both for this financial year and next financial year?
First Minister.
I'm really grateful to Mr Whitfield for raising this question, because we're at a really pivotal moment in the discussions, because I want to avoid industrial action. Once again, industrial action is proposed to be taken in the communities that I represent because I'm the First Minister, and I want to avoid that because I don't think it's fair on my constituents that their children are not able to access schooling as a result of industrial action. And I declare a personal interest in the sense that it will affect my son at a crucial moment in his education. So let's be crystal clear about the implications of this. Now, the Education Secretary has worked incredibly hard and focused to try to bring the relevant parties together. But this is not an issue that is entirely under the control of the Government. It involves a discussion and negotiation between the Government, COSLA and the trade unions. I am confident there is a proposal on the table, properly and fully funded by the Scottish Government, that will allow the industrial action to not happen. But it requires COSLA tomorrow to agree. So I would just encourage Mr Whitfield to join the team effort to make sure that COSLA gets it over the line so that we can avoid this industrial action, the children of Scotland can get on with their education, we can avoid industrial action, and we can all be happy that we've got a nice tripartite agreement. There's 2 parties that are there. Mr Mara is shouting at me, what about the money? I just told Mr Whitfield it's fully funded. And what we need is local authority leaders tomorrow to do the right thing, and I look forward to them doing so.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. Our next item of business is a member's business debate. Point of order, Pam Duncan-Glancy.
I thank the presiding officer for taking this point of order, and forgive me for not giving the presiding officer early sight of the point of order. Yesterday evening, we debated in this chamber a motion to consider the assisted dying bill tomorrow, an additional day of Parliament, which for many of us is absolutely a working day, and I would like to put that on the record now. But for the purposes of decisions such as this going forward, I wanted to share very briefly with the Chamber some of the considerations that had to be made in order for such a change at such notice by myself to be made. Within the last 12 hours since Parliament, I think it's 12 hours, maybe a bit longer, since Parliament met, 2 personal assistants and a family member and my husband have also had to change all of their working arrangements for tomorrow in order for me to be able to attend Parliament. I want members to know that I understand and I appreciate the ability to do that by hybrid. I think that is an important step that we have taken as a Parliament in order to encourage participation. Given the nature of the debate, I think members will understand why I wanted to be here in person. I'm not sharing this information for anyone to feel sorry for me, or indeed to feel sorry for the others in my life who have had to make sacrifices and changes at such short notice. I share it merely because I want people to understand that decisions such as this
impact not just members in this room, but our families too. And I speak also of other experiences that every single one of us will have, and all of the impacts that this job has on our life. So I'd like to put on record not only my thanks to the family members, to my husband and to the personal assistants who have changed their working patterns within the last 12 hours in order to accommodate my own participation in an important debate, but also to ensure Parliament can do its business, but also to put on record a request that when Bureau further considers incidences such as this, the impact on individual members and their family be deeply considered so that we can all participate.